Bajashig, welcome. Welcome to InDigital Insights. Monique Manatch, Indigenous. Kitikanik Anishinabek and Dojiba. My name is Monique Manatch, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And today we're honored to be able to speak with skilled storyteller Louise Profeit-LeBlanc from Nacho Nyak Dun. And Louise, you've had such a impactful life. Your stories, your work at Canada Council, all the work you've done with your community. I'm just so happy that we're able to sit here and have a conversation. And I'd like you to, if you can, how just tell me about your life. What do you think are some of the most important things about community life, about storytelling?
Well, Monique, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. This is part of our story, okay? Our conversation together. This is part of our story. So, definitely, when I'm being asked to share, okay, what does story mean to you? And like a lot of people will say, "Oh, are you going to come and perform?" I said, "No, I'm going to come and share a story." And so, just to take that a little step further, we have always been storytellers, Indigenous people. We have creation stories. Those are very, very old stories, and people still hold them. So that goes to show how strong oral traditions are. And I also, the whole idea of the honor of being in touch with ancestral story is, and those ancestral stories are our history, our association with our land, our association with our waterways, our association with all kinds of animals that fed us, that continue to feed us, the fish in the rivers, all of these things. But what is most important, I think, in the transfer of these stories is the love, the laughter, the encouragement of stories to help us get over difficult times, maybe, or in order to just have a real good belly laugh that you can laugh at yourself. Because oftentimes, I know that when my grandma would be telling me stories, I would think to myself, was that story about me? It was. So, you know, we don't have to be so serious about ourselves. So, I think stories are really underrated, oral traditions. And people always give so much attention if it's been written. It's almost like written gives it more validation. And that's why when I first started to recognize and work with elders, which is a long time ago before land claims were settled in the Yukon, I had one of the best jobs. I was asked to, and I was just a teenager at that time, in my early 20s. And I was asked to go and interview elders about land use. I thought to myself, how can I, you know, how can I collect their story when I have never lived where they lived when they were children? But they painted the picture for me. They gave me all the information. They filled my head. They described where they lived. They described what kind of a tent they had. They described about before they had guns. They described how to make a trap for a weasel, everything. And I just thought to myself, I have the best job in the world. Because all the time that I was sitting there recording, I can still see my grandpa. He said, "That machine turn on now?" So what was it? And I often think about this to myself, how privileged I was. Why, out of all of those other young people, like I had this responsibility, which I'm so grateful for and will be forever grateful for. And take, for instance, this one woman, I would always go over and check up on her because she's so old and she can't see very well. And my brother always made sure he went, chop wood for her, put her wood there. Even though she couldn't see, she still sewed. She would make dry meat bags out of canvas, and she would just feel her stitches. And when I would come there, she said, "My stitch is good." She would show it. These are the kind of people. So I spoke at the beginning, I spoke primarily with husband and wife. They had different stories, right? Because in those days, if a man was to marry, they'd have to go out of their community to another community. And they married into that community. That's kind of like, insurance policy. If that man mistreat that woman, oh, the whole family's there for her, right? So I could really see the logic in that, and that he had to prove himself, not just to her, to the whole community. And so as time went on, and I became very close to some very outstanding storytellers. I mean, the first storyteller was my grandma. She would invite us over to the house and stay for the weekend, and we were just in cloud nine. We'd be eating all kinds of good food with her, and she always let us drink tea. These kind of things. I'm just going to turn off my phone, and so we would just be loving it. Whoops, wrong one. Turn the power off. So at nighttime, she would get us all in her big bed. She had a huge bed, and she'd start telling us stories. So the littlest kid would go to sleep. Second kid pretty soon would go to sleep. My two brothers and I are still, the stories are continuing. It's a long story. The next night, my grandma would say to me, "Okay, Louise, you tell the story up to the time you went to sleep." So that's when I realized I had to listen. Now, this is the other thing that I'm convinced, that children that are brought up with the oral tradition, they have a far greater power to sit still and listen. And this is what story does. And by doing so, they are being prepared to sit by a little fishing hole, or to sit and wait for game to come, to be quiet, to be comfortable with quiet, and to listen to what's going on around you. And I've often said that to school teachers. I go into the schools in the Yukon, and I'm always so proud of the First Nation kids. They're sitting there so quiet, and sometimes the teachers say, "Well, this kid." I said, "Please don't prejudice my mind. I don't want to. I don't want any of these children here to miss this little story that was shared to me. Should be shared with them." And sure enough, she saw what I meant. As soon as the story started, these children who are supposed to be, rambunctious in the classroom, hyperactive or whatever, they just sat there. And then at the end, I asked the kids, "So what does that story mean to you?" And they all gave weird answers, except for the little First Nation boy. He said, "It means you're supposed to be honest." So things like this, beautiful things happened. So besides gathering all of these stories for land claims, purposes, for land use, for educating children about how they should behave And these stories are told through animals, like how they should behave. Many of these stories are about couples, and it could be two animals or two birds, how they should behave. Yeah. So it's all coded. That's how I look at it. It's all coded. Yeah. So I had a very wonderful mentor. Her name is Angela Sidney. I like to bring her name into this space that we're in, and her you know her presence in the Yukon is still so missed. And her name Chunede Ma. That's what they Chunede Ma. She that packs up and goes. And she came to Toronto. She came down for the storytelling festival in Toronto. And when she arrived home, I went to her community of Tagish to see how it went. She said, "Oh my," she said, "I'm so tired from that long plane ride. And I hardly slept too. Lots of noise, in Toronto." She said, "We should have a festival here in the Yukon. You figured out, you fellas figured out," she said, "we got storyteller from every community come into Whitehorse." And so anyways, I talked to some of my friends. They were working at the tourism department. Pretty soon we had an international Northern Storytelling Festival happening. And she said, "Thank you, honest cheese," she said, "for doing this. I don't have to go anywhere. I hear lots of storyteller right here," she said. So that went on for 14 years. And then I decided I'm going to come to work at the Canada Council, because I realized that I also had, being from the north, and I recognized that the northern needs were not being met, and it was mostly southern people that could access things easily. I mean, you could just walk over to the office if you're in Ottawa, and and I have to say, after I left my secretary, my former secretary, who now works for Stephen Loft there, she said, "Madame," she said, "when you left, there was no more stories." Because I made effort every day. When I would come in and I'd see the staff, I would stop, talk to them, share a little story. Because that's the glue that binds. We're all story in process. Every one of us. You have your story. Tyler has his story. We all have stories that intermingle. We have stories that are waiting to be told. Where stories, maybe we thought we forgot some stories. And just a little simple little item will make you remember that story. So what does it do? It increases your ability to listen. It increases your memory for sure. And I certainly found this out when I went to one of the big, what replaced the Yukon International Storytelling Festival was a wonderful festival called Adaka. Adaka means coming into the light. Huge, but it's dance, storytelling, music, all kinds of visual artists, you name it, was at this festival. And they're just taking a little hiatus, a little break right now, and they're going to start up again next year. So, all that being said, I've learned to realize that there are different kinds of stories. And whenever I'm asked to give a story at a festival, I guess they call that a performance. I call it a sharing. And I'm loath to give a title to the story, because stories have their own life and they can be bossy. So I'm just a keeper. I have these stories, and sometimes I would think, "Oh, I'm going to tell this story." And when I get there, that's not the story. It's not suitable to the people that are there. And so the story that comes to me is bossy, kicks the other one out. It drives my husband crazy. He said, "So, honey, what story are you going to tell tonight?" I said, "I haven't got the foggiest idea." Yeah. So, so there's ancient stories, which are ancestral stories. They're up there, I guess comparable to, what is it, like Greek mythology, like these are the classics. These stories, how the moon was made, how the sky world was made, what about the stars, all of these different things. Um, how did that glacier move the river to flow from north to south? Now it's flowing from south to north, all of these different stories. So these are the foundation. I refer to these as the foundation stories. Okay, so that's the first line of story. And if you can be consolidated, I suppose, like strengthened with these stories, then all of these other stories have their place. So the next would be regional, like in all of the different areas of the Yukon. And I feel so also so appreciative and honored that I got to know elders in every community. And these elders would share stories with me. Why? I don't know why. But now I know why. At the time, I thought, wow, why are they telling me this story? So these are different regions. So there's 12 nations in the Yukon. And I knew elders from every nation. And I would always attend the elders' council in the Yukon when we were discussing land claims. And I would be able to talk to, and all of them, without exception, they spoke their own style of English, but I could understand it. So, and they spoke their own language, of course. so so those are the top ones. That's ancestral stories. Those would be the classic stories. Those would be creation stories, and then the regional stories. So all the different First Nation, they have specific stories according to their land base, which riverways, which lakeways, which, like we have this lake in the Nacho Nyak Dun territory, and this lake, there was actually a sheep jump there where they would chase the sheep off the mountain and they would fall to their death. Imagine that. Yeah. So this is what I call like land use, what went down there, right? And so all of these different stories. And the next area would be community. Which community? So, like in the Yukon, there's 3 Northern Shoshone communities. And when you go up, if you drive up from Whitehorse, the first one you'll come to is Carmax. And that community is right by the Yukon River. The next one you'll come to is Pelly. They call themselves Selkirk First Nation, Carmax First Nation. And the Selkirk First Nation, their river that they live by is the Pelly River. These are major tributaries that Pelly dumps into the Yukon. But the Yukon flows all the way from the Yukon all the way through the territory up into Alaska and dump into the Bering Sea. It's huge, long, long, long. So, and then the last community, which is the Nacho, is the Stewart River, and the community is that's where I'm from, Mayo. So what happened there? What is that all about? Yeah, so different place names. You would get a story out of a place name. Um, so I'm just trying to recall now some of the outstanding ones in different regions. Anyways, what boils down to, you have your community, but then you have family stories. And these family stories, people tease you at Christmas time when you're all together. Remember this happened? Or somebody will say to somebody, yeah, I remember your first husband, used to do this and that. And you don't really want to hear these stories, but you hear them, okay, because that's what's made you who you are, right? So, yeah, so that I've gotten used to now moving from different levels of story and to keep them in your mind. Now, this story that I'm thinking about this morning, because my grandpa, and this was the grandpa of my former husband who's now gone, and so is Grandpa Joe Henry. His name was Shada, and he was from the Black Stone region, which is where all the caribou, like 4,000, 5,000 caribou, move from the Yukon. They winter in the Yukon. Why? So cold and miserable. And then they summer in Alaska. And yeah, and this has been going on for thousands of years. This is the porcupine caribou herd and the Blackstone caribou herd. And so people from these different regions, they're familiar with their migration. So I was up the Blackstone and we were recording. I was working with an archaeologist at that time. I was working for the Heritage Branch by then. And so I'll just tell you the story. So Auntie Mary Vitraqua, this is my former partner's grandpa's sister. His name was Shada. That's Joe Henry. So his sister's name is Mary Vitraqua. Vitraqua means no tear baby. Her husband's mother, when she was born, she had no tear ducts. So when she cried, she would cry, but no tears came out. And she said her eye always pussy. She got to keep wiping it off. She said she make some kind of tea, with spruce, and she clean it. So her name Mary Vitraqua. I like how it feels in my mouth. So as we were sitting around that campfire there, and throughout the day, Grandpa was telling us, how they used to make caribou corrals. He said maybe 5 years it take us to make one big corral. It was like a big fence. And where the Blackstone is, the trees there, even though they're 75 years old, they're still really skinny trees because of the intense and quick winters, short summers, all of this. He said, so we got to go long ways on a dog team down further down to the Chandakuchin country, he said. That's where we got to go down that way and pick up poles, trees. He said, we got to cut them trees and limb them and everything. We put them on our toboggan. He said, it take a long time for us to make them corrals. He said, just like big fence, we make it. And they were huge because from the air, when we were coming down with a chopper, Grandpa showed us all where the caribou fences were. And you could see they had fallen down over the years. And they're huge. I would say, just trying to think, you know how big a gymnasium is? That big. That's like a school gym, like a small gym. That's how big it would be. And they would make it a little chute, for that. When they chased all the caribou, they would go through the chute, then they lock it, and then they would spear it. He said, we don't have gun them days. He said, we got bow, arrow, club, spear too, he said. All the men go around. So if you can just picture that in your mind. So they had it down pat, with their technology, because that was their technology in those days. And my grandpa used to say, "Yep, I don't like it." He said, when they say, Indian time. That's not true. He said, that's our grocery store. If we're not there at the right time, we're gonna starve. Meaning, if you're not there at exactly the time that the caribou start moving, SOL. That's it.
Yeah.
They're gonna go right by and you're gonna miss them. So he said, that's why I don't like it. He said, you got a special time to go get beaver. You got a special time to go hunt moose. Special time that's we snare them caribou. He said we put them we corral them up, we fence them in. He said, and we kill it. So now I should tell you about Mary Vitraqua. She loved her brother so much. She just wanted to be up at that camp with us. And in the evening time, she would tell us these stories. She said, long time ago, there's this one young couple, they just got together. Oh, they just really love each other so much, she said. And they try to have baby. They they just love children. They can't make it. They go see that healer. She tried make medicine. Nothing. They feel so sad about that. They can't get baby. Them too. And here that man, he make little camp for them outside that big camp where all the people stayed together. Were waiting, for caribou to come. Every time she hear baby in that big camp, she cry because she can't have a baby. So her and her husband, they move over there. And she's, she's pretty wily, she knows how to set snares. She gets a little ptarmigan, and she has all these snares hooked on her belt. She goes out there every day and run her little snare line. Sometimes she get rabbit or whatever. And here she said one day, she said she was out there and she thought she's hearing things. She said she hear baby cry. She walked towards the sound where the baby crying from. Here the little baby laying down there on the snow, and his belly button stuck right on top of a little spruce tree. Oh my goodness, she can't believe it. She grabbed that baby. She got a couple of pieces of sinew. She tie off that belly button there, and she cut him like that. She put that baby under her parka, little baby boy. Oh, you see, she prays so hard. She cries so long. Oh, Taudingi, that's a creator. He hear her. He hear her. He give her a baby. She took that baby home. Oh, her husband's so happy. They just fell in love with that little guy. How they gonna feed it? Sometime mama have a baby die long time ago. They give that baby to her sister, even though she got no milk. They put baby there, baby suck, pretty soon milk come. You know that? She said. I said, yes, I do, Auntie. Well, that's what them gonna do too, she said. But before that, milk come, what are gonna feed him? So she said they had a little bit of caribou bones. They boil it up, they make soup and take little caribou hide, dip it in the soup. That baby, he sucked that soup. That's what he live on until she get milk. And that little guy snuggle up. He started to get milk. But she said, funny thing, when it's a full moon outside, she said, that baby get cranky. He cry. His mom can't comfort him. And that father, he said, what's the matter with our boy? She said, I don't know. Here she think to herself, maybe he want to see maybe I'll take him to see the moon. Maybe that changes his mind. So she said, I took him out. I show him moon. That lady, she said, she showed him the moon. Look, my little boy, she said, Tiddly, there's a moon. And that baby just stopped crying. And she took the baby back in. Baby started crying again. So she took the baby out. As soon as he saw the moon, he don't cry. So her and her husband, they realized, and her husband said, "We got moon baby. We got moon spirit baby. He's very special." And he was. That little guy didn't grow big. He was dwarf, eh? And in the high Arctic, maybe you don't know, but they have this land, it's called tussock. You know, you when you walk on it, you sink, and it's real like the moss, and you sink into it. And so even though that little guy, he was so short too, his mother made him pants out of marten skin, and so she called him Thukthul, fur pants boy. Because he's built so close to the ground, he gets cold easy, so she make him fur pants. He had those little pants on there, Thukthul. Now time pass, eh? They're having a good time, and he's growing. And the time of starvation come. Caribou took different trail that year. They go different way. Sometimes they do that. Oh boy. People are just so hungry. Babies crying, children dying. It's not good. And that little boy, even though they were out in the outer camp, the father brought the news. He said, "We're having a hard time right now down in the big camp." He said, "Caribou took different trail." And that little guy said, "I can make Caribou come back. I'm going to try," he said. And his mother was so surprised. He said, "I'm going to try, Ma. I'm going to try." So he went outside of the tent, big moon there, and he broke some sticks, 2 little sticks. And Mary, she's such a sweetheart. Mary said to me, Mary Vitroka, "I'm so sorry," said she. That's my granddaughter. "I'm so sorry," said she, "but I forgot that song. That's an old song," she said. "I hear this story when I'm a little girl. But that little guy, he know the song. He went out there and he hit them sticks. Now them sticks, when caribou move across the land like that, their antler touch each other. They go across, they grunt too, they fart. You hear them horn touch each other." She said, "Oh, I like that sound." And him too, you make a song with it. Pretty soon his father went out there. His father saw bull caribou up on the rise. Oh, that's a boss caribou. He's bringing his people. He's bringing his people. Oh boy, people got excited, eh? Everybody make noise and everything. Now that man had told the people, "My son, before this happened, my son, he's going to try to make medicine for caribou to come back." And I asked him, "What do you want for pay if you bring caribou back?" He said, "All I want is a caribou stomach fat." Now, maybe you don't know, but the stomach of the caribou, around the outside of it, there's little globules of fat. And this is a hunter's medicine. They just peel it off the outside of the stomach, and it's just like translucent, and then all these little pieces of fat. It kind of, we call it, in English, we call it lace fat. And you just hang it up to dry. You could smoke it a little bit. And when the hunter goes out, he just breaks off a little piece. And he can break off 2 or 3 pieces to put in his pocket. But when he's out on the land, he needs energy. You just chew it. Whoa. That's like a tonic. Get really strong. He said, that's all I want. So I guess his father had told the people, and now here's all the people, the women, the children, but not this little boy's mom and him. They stayed in their little tent, in their little camp. They stayed there. Hunters got together. They were slaughtering it. That's early in the morning, too. In the afternoon, Suksul, he's sitting down there with his mother. What kind of people I live with, he said. She said, what do you mean, son? I live with these people all these years. They're not trustworthy. They don't keep their promise. I asked for a little bit of fat. Nobody bring it. His mother said, son, you have to realize people are cutting meat. They're busy right now. They're going to come. Don't worry, she said. She's so happy. And he said, Vanda vetlit. Vanda vetlit, he said. I want to go back to the moon, my home. No, son, she said, you watch, they're going to bring it. So a couple hours passed. Pretty soon it's going into evening time. And his father is coming home. He's bringing home fresh meat for his wife and his boy too. And the mother told him what happened. What? Nobody brought you anything? He said, no. I'm the Vetlit. I'm going to go back to my people. These people are not trustworthy. And so that couple, they loved that little boy so much. They put him right between them in bed so he don't leave. But despite that fact, when they woke up in the morning, here's a little fur pants up there on the smoke hole. He went back to the moon. Now, to this day, and right now, this past full moon, this big red moon here, that's making the Caribou move in the Yukon. And if you look at that big moon in the spring, you look at it very carefully, you will see a little boy standing there, and he's got a little bit of lace fat in his hand. And in the fall, same thing. Caribou start coming back from Alaska side, and the big moon in the fall come back to Yukon. So that little boy kept his promise. That's the story.
Story. Oh,
Thanks to Mary Vitroka. I love her so much. She was a very small, like very petite woman, small boned, I guess. There's a very rough river that eventually goes into the Firth, and then the Firth dumps into the Big Mackenzie River. She said, when I'm just young woman, she said, I don't know why we build big boat in them days. We're going to move from our camp up at Blackstone, and we're going to go down to Big River for fishing. So we're all going to move. And so we keep all the hides, and we made a big moose hide boat to put all our gear in. And then the women and children and young men, they walk on the side of on the shoreline of the river. Aberdeen. She said, oh, that's a rough river, rough. And they need 12 people in the boat to paddle. They got pilot in the front, one man, he tell you which way paddle, which way to go quick, because bad rapids, she said, So they have all their stuff in there. Why, he asked me to be the 12th person. Me, I'm too skinny. She said, I'm strong, but I'm skinny. But he said, no, you got to do it. So I can't argue with my mama. Jump in the boat. We're going like hell. She said, I can't even hear him
Joking.
do what he says. She said, you know, I'm stupid that time, I just go. And she was telling me how she paddled. And she said, next thing, she said, we're going down a river really fast. Here, this rock just come out like this, like tunnel under. And the pilot said, duck down. Everybody had ducked down. Oh my goodness, she told me a story. That from that story, I thought to myself, she's superwoman. She said, when we got to the other side of that rapids, and there's a little bit of falls there too. When we got to the other side, oh, she said, just like lake, so calm. So what they would do, she said, we got all those skin we make that boat with, 12 moose height. That's a pretty damn big boat. She said, we take it all apart. We make what we call duck boat. We make little round boats and we paddle around and we kill ducks. Oh man.
I can just imagine a whole bunch of little round boats.
Yeah, and they're just paddling around there too. They would snare ducks,
Okay.
snare them. Yeah. They have
Nice.
all different kinds of ways of doing different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So
that's so, what a wonderful life you've been able to have all these elders tell you these stories,
yeah,
you know.
it's so
It,
rich,
yeah,
really rich.
very, very rich.
Yeah.
And that's like millennia's, like not just one millennia, like several. Like that knowledge comes from, you know, God knows how many millennia.
Yeah.
That it
Since the
comes
beginning. Since the
exactly,
beginning. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were in this territory, they say at least 8,000 years. And that's because when the ice age, when the ice started receding, then we came up from the south.
Right.
And, but you guys, I mean, you had been there much longer
Yeah.
than what we were here because where we are located in Ottawa and,
Yeah.
the area, it was covered in ice, but
Yeah.
you guys live beside and on top of and around and,
Yeah.
all of
Well, there's glaciers are alive. And one of the people, one of my teachers, he said in the old times, if you're going to go over the glacier, because they'd have to go over the glacier to the Yukon from the southeast coast of Alaska, there around Juneau area. He said we would go over Mendenhall. Now Mendenhall is so far back receded. When I was a young woman, in my 20s, I would go over to Juneau. I could go right up to the glacier and lick it. Now it's way back. That was a very particular, important route for the Tlingits coming over to the inland people. And when you approach the glacier, you have to be very quiet. If you have to, yeah, be very reverent because a glacier moves and it can swallow you. You have to take your own dried food. You cannot start a fire there, even though it will be cold. You cannot take anything like that. And you have to be absolutely clean of any kind of bad thoughts because it can just take you in. Yeah. There's lots of glacier stories. Yeah, so these things are alive. Yeah, and one of my story mentors, you know, Mrs. Smith, Kitty Smith, her name was. Yeah, she told me stories about the glacier. She told me stories about there's different kind of animals. She said, she told me stories about we used to live by salty water, she said. And I asked one of the paleontologists, I said, could that be true? He said, yes, definitely. He said, we have found skeletons that look like octopus. He said, so there was in like landlocked seawater from the melt and the coming together and, the saltiness. And so when he told me that, I was just so appreciative because by then Grandma Kitty had already left. And yeah, she told me this one story. So this is a personal story. So remember I told you that there's family story, there's personal stories. And yeah, she married the chief in the end. She had two husbands. And she was telling me, she said, when I'm a young woman, this one man, he want a wife. So in those days, the parents would give permission, just. And the other thing, she was a carver, even though she was a woman. I said, Grandma, how come you carve? She said, that's my uncle. When my daddy died, my uncle take over. And so she was telling me something about the cultural practice, okay? Even though you have no inklings for this woman, that was your responsibility now to take over for your brother. And especially if there's children, you have to provide for your brother's children. So that's what happened. She said, my husband, he's mean to me. He treated me badly, she said. Oh my goodness, I was so surprised how she was so candid about that. Lucky, she said, I got TB. Lucky. They shipped me down. They shipped me down to Edmonton, she said. They fly me airplane. I stay there 2 years, she said. I got TB. I even learned some. You know how to speak Cree, she said. I learned some words there. That woman stay in the same room as me. She speak Cree. Oh my God. So she's telling me about the history of the sanatorium in Edmonton, right? Charles Camsell Hospital. Lots of Indigenous people went there. So she said, yeah, I'm there for 2 years. Pretty soon, doctors say, you good now, you can go back. I wasn't looking forward to it, she said. Gonna go back. Here, you know what, she said. When I left and I never come back 1 year, my husband, he get married again. He got another wife. She said, I don't make any talk about it. She said, I don't say that I'm disappointed. She said, I'm not. She's in her late 80s telling me this story.
That's great.
She said, yeah. She said, here I find best man, Chief Johnny Smith. He never even ever raised his voice to me. He never ever hit me, nothing. And she said, then that's the man I marry. I thought to myself, she deserved that. She deserved that. Yeah, she was an amazing woman. So she used to carve because her uncle was a famous carver. and he didn't have any sons. So he used to teach her secretly in the wood house. She called it the wood house. It's like where you pile up your wood. In the wood shack, she said, my mama, she don't mind. So during the Second World War, Monique, this woman, such a, you know, just such a entrepreneur, she sold carvings to soldiers who were building the highway. So these went back to the American, somewhere there in America, all these, wouldn't that be wonderful? We could find them. Yeah. Yeah. We have only one in the museum in Whitehorse. And this is it's a little carving. And she told me the story about the carving. But he only had one earring. She said, he lost one earring. She made the earrings out of caribou teeth. She put it in the wood.
Okay. Wow. Oh, they must have been
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I'll have to send you that picture. It's in a magazine. Yeah, so that's another personal story. So I told you ancient story, ancestral story. I told you regional story. That's with the Guchin up the Blackstone area. And I told you that other story of the fish, the man who, it's a regional story too. Community story, actually. How do we save the community? Every one of us can suffer somehow, to pull it together. This is the other thing about story, is that for every person who hears it, you hear it through your own ears and you see it through your own eyes, through your own cultural framework, right? And this always made the children in the classes feel so good. I said, you're all hearing your own version of this story, and they're all correct. Some people say, that's not what this story means. For the moment, that's what the story means. Yeah.
It means something different. It means what they needed to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, what
Yes.
they needed to learn
Yeah.
from.
And the thing is that you hear the story, 2 days later, you'll hear it in a little different way. Like even when I tell the stories, I'm reminded of something else in the story that is a lesson for me for today.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe I'm thinking, here's Auntie Mary Vitriqua, so skinny, so tiny, and she was tough and such a kind person. Oh my goodness, she was so, so kind. Always a big smile on her face. Yeah, you got to be happy, she said. You got to be happy. Look what we got, she said.
Yeah, it's surprising all the the hardships that they go through, that they suffered, and yet, yeah, their their look on life, their perspective, the way they live their lives.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
son's Jaban, great grandmother,
Yeah.
he's he's her Jaban and she's his Jaban,
Oh,
but it's the same. It means that there's that extra generation in there,
yes. Yes.
and her name was Mary.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's been through so much. She had TB.
Maybe
Yeah,
she even shared a room with
maybe that's the
Grandma
Cree.
Kitty. Maybe it's a Korea.
Cree, yeah. She spoke with, yeah, yeah, and yet she was funny, so funny.
Yeah. Oh,
I was
yeah.
on, I was on the phone with her one time. I was up in Moose Factory, and I said, "Well, why don't you come over?" I was outside, just with the phone. So why don't you come over for supper? She said, "No." She said, "There's a storm coming." I said, "A storm?" I said, "The sky is clear." She says, "Turn around." We're on the phone. She says, "Turn around." I turn around and All these clouds are just coming at me.
Yeah.
You laugh.
Look around, girl.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we laughed a lot.
That's
And
a good one.
yeah, yeah, she was a sweetie. I loved her to bits. Her only grandchild, Liam, my sister,
Oh,
her only, well, not her only, like, uh, but her only bloodline. Like she had one son
oh,
who had one son, and Liam, one son.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is this story here. I haven't told this story for a long time, so I'll just read it. This is from Grandma Kitty.
Okay.
It's how Indians got fire.
Oh.
She said, Crow. Crow is the one who first got fire. That's a raven, eh? They call, I guess, when the newcomers came, they looked at this big raven. They said, holy crap, that's a big crow. But we know it's tsiki. That's raven. That's my clan, actually, Raven clan. Crow was the one who first got fire. You know that chicken hawk? He got a long nose that time. Crow got king salmon. He can't eat it without fire. He want to cook it. Some place he see fire, he come out of salt water. You know this volcano, eh? Some place he see fire come out of salt water. He don't know how to get it. How he know fire? Crow. He don't know which way gonna get it. Somebody gonna get it, he think. That time he tell them birds, you think we're gonna get it, that fire? No. Chicken hawk, he got long nose, he said. He told Crow, I'll try. So Crow got pitch from wood. He put it on that chicken hawk nose. He tie up his beak. Try now. He waited for that fire to start coming out. Soon it come up. He poke his beak there. He started to burn his beak. Oh boy, that chicken hog, he beat it home. He just running around my nose, start to burn. He's screaming his head off. You're doing good, you're doing good, call out that crow. Just unsure, he fell down. He got it already, that crow. That chicken hawk got pretty sick though. So that crow grabbed that fire, eh? Come on, Crow, tell him I'm going to make medicine for you. And he fixed up his little beak. He make medicine for it. Nice looking boy now, he said. Woman gonna like you good now, he said. They cooked that fish. They put away that tail. They put away that tail so it won't make foolish for people. Everybody eat that fish now. Since that time, they got that flint to make fire. Yeah. Wow, that's a sweet little story from Grandma Kitty. How Indians got fire. A little chicken hawk is so brave, eh?
Yeah.
He really trusts his friend too. This is the thing, eh? Sometimes friends they give us fire and they tell us, "Come on, you can do it."
Yeah, go get the fire.
Oh God.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
So,
So when did you start telling these stories? Is that something like you've done in your family and then
oh yeah, like whenever I had to babysit my
yeah.
siblings, I would tell stories there. I think my grandma always knew that I was going to be a storyteller because she said, "Oh, you always tell story. That's good." She said. And when I was in high school, I think I was in grade 11, I was studying Shakespeare, Shakespeare,
Yeah.
and I wasn't doing good. But we had a very kind of forward thinking teacher, our English teacher. And when he gave me when he gave me my paper back, my exam, he said, if you want to talk about your mark, just come after class. I went there. I said, oh, I didn't do too good. He said, well, what can we do about it? I said, listen, you think you have tragedies in your stories? I said, let me tell you a story about tragedy. I told him one of these stories. And he said, if you write that story out for me, I'm going to give you a mark. I got a very good mark. He was very forward thinking. So it was during that time, but where I really started to realize that I could tell stories. It's just sitting around with elders, and I would say, "Did you hear this story?" And I would start it, and then they would say, "No, no, it doesn't go that way, or it goes this way." So that's when I started, and then when I got really going, and I encouraged all the elders from all the different communities to come into Whitehorse to tell stories, and they really encouraged me. But it's not that I never got any poison pen letters from people who are jello. I got a couple of those letters. They said, "What are you trying to do? Trying to be an elder?" And so I went to Grandma Kitty Smith, and I also went to Auntie Angela, and I told them this dilemma. I said, I got really bad. I got some bad letters. I read them, and Auntie Angela, that's my auntie. She said, "I'm not really your auntie. I'm your cousin." She said, but because of her age, we call her auntie. She said, "You never mind." She said, "Is that person going to tell stories when I go?" "I don't think so." "You never mind," she said. "Don't pay no attention." And then when I took my sad story there to Grandma Kitty Smith, she said, "Just jello." She's just jealous.
Yeah.
She said, "Don't pay attention." So that gave me full permission, to go forward. And anytime that if I'm in a community where I tell stories from their community, I always say, "I have received permission from," and I would tell the elder the name of the elder. And some of these stories in those communities, they've never heard that story before. So it's almost as if their ancestors are intervening, and I'm able to share that story. I said, here, I said, "You can take the recording of this story." The other thing that we did, which I was so proud of, because there was 3 of us working at the storytelling festival. I was working for the Yukon Heritage Branch, and my boss didn't like me to be at the festival. And I said, "Well, I'm taking some days off. I'm recording history, Indigenous history, right?" So what we did was every story that was recorded at these festivals, we recorded them and we made them archival material. So anybody that's going to the university now, University of Yukon University, if they want, they can just go to the archives. Let's say they're from Carmax, and they just go there and they say, "Do you have any Fort Selkirk, or you have any Carmax, or you have any Mayo stories?" And they'll pull all of these recordings. So you sit there, you listen. It's all been transcribed as well. So that's really, I was thinking to myself, we just fell upon that, us 3 women. We just said, "We're going to do this. We're going to record these stories." And now all these elders are gone, but their stories remain. Yeah. And as it went on, I went to different festivals. I went to storytelling festival in Vancouver. And what I noticed is that they all have books. They get their stories from books, fairy tales, you know, all these fairy tale books that they have, and the British people brought over to Canada. Yeah. So they didn't have any oral traditions. So we got to hang on to it. Got to hang on to oral tradition for sure. That's so important. Yeah, when I went to what really astounded me, in the old days, we always kept our elders close to us. And, they usually died at home, in our home, and now that's not the case anymore. Lots of these elders, they're going to these long-term care places, and they hear a van drove up, and it's from the Whistle Bend long-term care. 6 elders got out of that bus. when I was at the Adaka festival, and I walked up to this one who I just adored when I was a kid. I used to think she was like a movie star or something. Just drop dead gorgeous. Very, you know, that's just her beauty. And so I said, Rosalie, I said, so nice to see you. And she said, who you? Because I hadn't seen her for 10 years. And I said, oh, I'm Louisa. I'm Louise Profeit. Where are you from? So, because they don't have a chance to tell stories, share stories with little kids, share stories with their children, keep these stories alive. I think part of your brain that holds memory is getting lazy, is sloughing off, And I saw this also proven when I went over to palliative care in Whitehorse, and there was a man there, Northern Shoshone man. He was from Selkirk. His name is Tommy McGinty. Oh my God, this guy. He could tell you stories that have you peeing your pants, laughing so much. And here he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And because my auntie was also in palliative care, so I talked to the people that were running palliative care. I said, do you mind if I come over and tell some stories to the people? I said, I know two people there. One is my auntie and one is my very good friend, storyteller. You know what, Monique? When I started telling those stories, that man who had not spoken for 2 months started laughing, hitting his leg. Just, he, it sparked some juices in his brain that was malfunctioning for most things, but he was still wired for story. Seriously. Oh my goodness. So we have to tell more people, I think. That's kind of my thing, when I see these places being built by our own people, they're building these places for our elders to live, that there has to be at least once or twice a day a storytelling session
Yep.
to keep things
Yep.
alive and well in there, right?
It's like a muscle that you don't use, it atrophies, it
Hello.
shows up.
Yes,
Yeah, your brain's, I
that's
think,
right.
the same. I think our
Yeah,
brains are the same. And doing that, I've
yeah,
seen that. My son's family is from Moose Cree First
uh-huh,
Nation,
yeah.
and there was they didn't have a long term care, so these old people were being sent hundreds of miles away, Kirkland Lake, and I'm like, where's, because I'd go up and there was these lovely, they were the Anglican church women, but they were traditional women,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there was the Anglican church and they did all the meals, like they did a dinner every month and they had little sales and they did, all this kind of stuff. And they were,
WA.
yeah, yeah,
WA, right?
yeah.
Women's Auxiliary, WA. Yeah,
I love those women. They were fantastic. And this one
yeah.
little, and then, yeah, she got sick and the medical just sent her off and that's where she stayed until she died. And it broke my heart.
Uh,
She was such a lovely, just such a lovely, funny, they're quiet, but they're deadly funny, eh?
yeah, yeah,
Like sharp, sharp, funny.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I asked
exactly.
her one time, I said, can I join the Anglican Church women without joining the Anglican Church? And she said, no. I'm like,
You're
fine.
defeating the purpose.
Yeah. I said, I'll help with the cooking. And she just laughed.
Aw.
Yeah, she was a sweetie. I didn't want to join the Anglican Church.
Yeah, well, we really owe it. We owe it to these people, that have shared so much with us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was a sweetie. But, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I love your stories.
This has been really delightful way to spend the morning. Mm, yeah, for sure.
And I can't wait to work with you some more.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So fun.
Thanks.